Shanti. So, today we will be discussing Vedanta as a science of human possibilities. So, we have been discussing the various aspects of human personality and how different possibilities are discovered or uncovered. That is a better word. We uncover something which is already there in potential form. We uncover them or try to discover them within us. And as each of these different layers of our personality, our layers are developed, you will find that the possibilities that we can do with this body and mind of ours, body, mind, and spirit, this integrated personality of ours, the possibilities also increase. So, we had discussed how the classification according to Vedanta can be tripartite, that is, Sukshma, Sthula or gross, Sthula, Sukshma, subtle, and causal. Causal body implies that we have certain impressions which have which are also known as inherent tendencies. Sigmund Freud might call them unconscious memories or unconscious part of our personality, where most of these impulses are lying dormant, and whenever they get a chance to express themselves, we find them coming out as thoughts, like a small bubble at the bottom of the ocean or bottom of a lake. When it comes up and the bubble becomes bigger and bigger till it bursts upon the surface, and then you see the bubble. But when it is at the bottom of the seabed or the bed of the lake, you don't see it normally. Similarly, our unconscious tendencies, inherent tendencies, which we see present in our what is known as causal body. Vedanta calls it Karana Sharira. Karana means they cause all the different actions. They become actions much later, but they first manifest themselves as thoughts, as unconscious thoughts, then conscious or instincts, then conscious thoughts, and then it may or may not lead to action depending on whether the will is involved. If the willpower is involved, thoughts do not remain thoughts. Thoughts manifest themselves as concrete actions. So, till this point, we discussed how will is important in determining whether our inherent tendencies, which are latent, which now and then come to the surface as thoughts, whether these thoughts find expression in our action. So, the chapter that we are discussing now is mind and its ways. So, we have discussed how the three types of bodies that we have, the Sthula Sharira, the gross body, made up the body and all the energy that is associated with that. The forces, we can also say Prana. Though they are subtle, they act upon the body, the five different pranas. But at the same time, we have the mind, the lower mind, which is the reactive mind, which is more or less instinctive. The instincts that are stored in our unconscious, or here we can call it Karana Sharira. These instincts propel the thoughts first, and then depending on how much willpower we possess, good and bad actions are a result of that. They can be bad actions if there are more evil samskaras, negative emotions in our unconscious, and they can be good if there are good thoughts, positive thoughts in our unconscious. So, Karana Sharira or the causal body is the innermost core of our personality according to one particular classification. Now, I'm repeating this again and again because we need to have a very clear idea of what human personality is all about before even considering the possibilities that we can uncover or discover. So, we start with the gross body. Everybody knows how gross body can be trained. Physically, we can train ourselves to uh, discover certain skills or maybe manifest certain skills like bodybuilding and then sports. So they are purely physical or kinesthetic skills which we develop. That is as far as the gross body is concerned. We become agile, we become fit, then we have nutritious food. So there are so many factors that are responsible for our Sthula Sharira, for maintaining our Sthula Sharira and exploring all the physical possibilities that can improve our personality. The second level, we try to train our mind, as I said, through our mental skills, which are skill training, which can train the mind to do certain actions by repeated training or repeated practice. We can train the mind to do certain tasks, mathematical or otherwise. There are so many skills, like a surgeon has his own skills developed by repeated practice. So these are not, these, though they need intelligence, they are more or less instinctive, some kind of mechanical skills, which a good training, a good surgeon, a good IT professional or a computer specialist, he has to do over and over. Even a good typist, he has to do, it's not just a physical skill. So there are many skills which can explore many possibilities which are related to the lower mind, which is known as manas. But then we also discuss another aspect of our personality. Please don't mind the repetition because these are connected to the passage that we are discussing today. So there are other skills, as I said, where a higher aspect of the mind becomes active. We call it buddhi. So this buddhi is very important because it teaches us how to use wisely, properly by making the right choices. The skills, the mechanical skills or the skills of the lower mind that we have acquired as a result of education, proper education, going to institutes or self-training, whatever method we might have used, we need a certain degree of wisdom to use those skills wisely. Otherwise, our life can be miserable. If we misuse those skills, we can become demons. We can create a lot of problems. We can become evil people. So the skills by themselves does not make a good personality. We saw how buddhi, development of buddhi, the wisdom to use the skills wisely is more important than the skills themselves. Now with AI and other things, most of these skills are can be done through machines. So how do we use these machines for our advantage, for a positive goal, for something good? You can use it for something bad as well. So who decides that? So that's why ethics comes into the picture. Then we discussed elaborately why buddhi is important and how buddhi can be awakened. So that explores another set of possibilities. How you can ensure that a human personality or a human being can use his buddhi to explore more and more positive, good, and noble possibilities. Otherwise, if pure skills are developed without having the capacity to make the right choices in life, in spite of all our great, wonderful skills, we can still suffer. So, this important aspect, which it comes under the category of Vijnanamaya Kosha. As I told you, there is a threefold classification: Sthula, Sukshma, Karana. But Vedanta also divides the personality into five different aspects. One is the Annamaya Sharira, the physical body; the Pranamaya Sharira, the forces that harmoniously help us to harmoniously uh, do all the activities of the physical body, that is known as pranamaya sharira. So these both relate to more to the body than to the mind. Of course, pranamaya sharira affects the mind, the lower mind. So if you are not healthy, obviously your mind doesn't function properly, at least the instinctive mind. So it is unable to explore those possibilities. But then we find that more than that, we come to the fourth level of our personality, Vijnanamaya Kosha, which enables us to make the right choices. So that is known as Buddhi. So we discussed all these things. So now, after that, we explained how our Karana Sharira, that is the causal body, or which is equated to the Anandamaya Kosha, or the innermost core, where all our past inherent tendencies are stored. Sigmund Freud would classify them as unconscious, the unconscious mind, the unconscious or subconscious, where we have no idea. As I mentioned, give this example which Swami Vivekananda gave in his Raj Yoga, that our mind is like an iceberg. Nine tenths is unconscious, one tenth is the tip of the iceberg is only seen. So by seeing or by uh, even our own minds, when we try to explore, we are trying to train only one tenth of the tip of the iceberg that we see. We are conscious only of that. But nine tenths are deep within us in the subconscious, and our skill training, in spite of the best education that one can have, one does not explore the nine tenths. And this is according to Sigmund Freud, also who believes that man should not be very proud that he is what he is good or he is bad because he can has the capacity to think. But he says Sigmund Freud, though Vedanta will not accept this, he said you are not as free as you think you are. Nine tenths of your personality is in the unconscious. So even if you have good intentions, your unconscious suppressed samskaras or inherent tendencies will make you do something which you really do not intend to do. You are not as free as you think. So that is one of the blows that was given to religion or ethics by Sigmund Freud. Darwin gave one the first blow, as they say, by saying that man is not made in the image of God, as some of the scriptures want us to believe. Of course, they were wrong, but Darwin showed that we have descended from apes or other mammals. So, scientifically, he said we don't have to trace. How can we trace the image of man, or God is man is made in the image of God? So, he wanted to shake the foundations of theology or religion to its very foundations. So that was a big shock. And then finally Sigmund Freud came, and then he said that you are not even a rational animal because all your reasoning is based on the unconscious, is dictated by a vast repository of inherent impressions which are lying deep within the subconscious or unconscious mind, and you are not as free as you think. So you want to do something good, and suddenly your samskaras, your old tendencies make you do otherwise. So he says, don't say that you are free to do what you want. So that was a big blow. So anyway, let us not go into those discussions. Here, the point Vedanta makes is each individual is born with a particular psychophysical constitution, which is made of these five different aspects: the physical, the prana, the mind, the lower mind, the higher mind. Lower mind, of course, is the skill that we develop as a result of our education. The higher mind, which through spiritual practices, through moral and ethical uh, impulses which we get by following particular religion or spiritual tradition, ethics and other things come to us, and then we choose wisely. We use our wisdom to choose wisely, and a certain moral order can be expected, at least individually, if not as a group. As a group, we may not behave in an ethical manner, but individually, one has the freedom. Even if he belongs to an unethical group, he can choose to become ethical. So each person has a capacity or buddhi or wisdom which belongs to the Vijnanamaya Kosha, the fourth level of our personality. But these psychophysical, we call it psycho because physical characteristics we definitely inherit from, maybe a part of it we inherit from our parents, the biological characteristics. But according to Vedanta, mental characteristics are our own, having these are carried over from our previous lives. That is why you see so much of discrepancies between two twin brothers. Even twin brothers, they behave differently because they come with their own baggage of karma. The residual impressions which belong to the Karana Sharira, according to Vedanta, they are conveyed from a previous incarnation or several lives. That is how Buddhism, Hinduism, and even Jainism and other religions of the East, they believe that we are what we are because of the residual impressions which we have inherited in a previous life, not just one life, but there may be several lives where uh, we have accumulated these impressions. So, heredity does not explain. We cannot explain everything by the modern genetics and hereditary explanations. Certain physical characteristics, certain diseases, certain chronic diseases can be explained because we definitely inherit according to genetics or studies in heredity and all those things, genetic pool and all those things. So those scientists believe that we can explain everything you inherit, all the biological characteristics. And they also extend that idea and say that even the mental characteristics are inherent, where Vedanta differs. They said your parents are responsible, or your whole lineage, the grandparents and all. No doubt you inherit biological characteristics, but psycho, that is mental characteristics are unique to you, unique to each person. So heredity does not explain the original differences in the inner nature of men and women. So men and women, they may be born in very noble families, but they can turn out to be very evil people. Though they have got the same education as their brothers, even two twin brothers can differ a lot. So the inner nature or the inner thoughts and the other inherent tendencies or your own karma, residual, they call the karma is known as residual impressions. So what are these residual impressions? In Vedanta, they are known as karma. What is karma? You do certain actions. It leaves behind a residue. And those residues will, like it's just the simple example is given of different habit forming drugs or cigarette, even cigarette. So you smoke once, it forms a residual impression. You don't have a tendency to smoke again unless you repeatedly smoke, then you become a habitual smoker. That is because those inherent tendencies are strong. The residual impressions after several sessions of smoking, the moment you see a cigarette, you feel like smoking. So that is the example. So similarly, all our past actions, they leave behind residual impressions, and it's a very scientific theory to explain our present behavior by our past karma. So, in consequence of these residual impressions, which are known as karma, in one sense, they are also known as karma, and the action that we do is also known as karma. So, in the previous incarnation or the previous lives, the residual impressions are inherited, and each time the human being begins its journey, uh, he or she inherits, he brings, he inherits those residual impressions irrespective of the biological characteristics that he has got from his parents. Mentally, he can be totally different. So that is a fundamental difference. He doesn't share, mind you, the mental characteristics of his parents. So that is how the science of genetics, though it is accepted as far as physical characteristics are, biological characteristics are concerned, but as far as psychological or mental characteristics are concerned, each one is unique. So that is a basic difference between Vedanta psychology or yoga psychology and you may say genetic psychology, if there is anything like that. So, past karma, according to Vedanta, they are responsible for the original differences that you see with which a man starts his life. Swami Vivekananda in his Raj Yoga says, see, for example, Jesus' parents, his father was a carpenter. So ideally, he should also be a carpenter, or maybe if you just go by genetics alone, you can't explain how he becomes a prophet. So naturally, when you come to all the different uh, great people of the world, or even the evil people, they differ fundamentally from their parents or even from their that entire race. They exhibit different mental and spiritual characteristics in spite of having been born into a particular race or particular religion. So, or a particular ethnicity. So here Vedanta says, irrespective of your caste, creed, religion, ethnicity, you are responsible for your weaknesses and excellences, the inherent tendencies that you have gathered and have inherited, and you have been born in a particular body. You inherit all those past impressions, and that will decide your future. Not what of course, environment is also responsible, but then karma theory says that you get the environment that you deserve. Especially if Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, when when Arjuna is having some doubts, he says, according to you, all my actions and my intentions, my willpower, and all those things will be responsible. I do good actions, good karma, and accumulate a lot of karma, just as I accumulate money, accumulate property. But most of the physical things have to be left behind. I don't take those things and carry it over to my next birth. But what will happen to my good deeds? Will they not just be lost as I lose all the money and other things? I have to keep it behind. I don't know what will happen to them. I can't take it to my next birth. But Sri Krishna says, no, that doesn't happen. Because they are subtle, because they belong to the causal body, the same causal body, same thing helps you and creates a situation where you are born into a family of yogis. He says, yoginam api, in the family of yogis, or in a situation where your spiritual journey can be continued. So nothing is lost. So that's why he says, unlike losing all the wealth that you have, physical wealth, physical property, this you will inherit, and that will continue in your next birth. So that is not going to be lost. So he assures Sri Krishna. So that's why we cannot criticize somebody or parents or anyone for our excellences or for our weaknesses, or even take pride in our excellences, because we have, it's just that we have worked hard in some previous incarnation, which the fruits of which we are getting now, or maybe we have done some bad karma and gathered lot of residual impressions which make me the evil person that I am today. So we cannot blame just education. Maybe part of it is nurture. It may not be our nature, but because we are nurtured in a particular way, we can blame them. But why are you, as Swami Vivekananda famously says, he says, you always criticize that I was born and brought up in a very bad atmosphere. That's why I'm what I am. But then he says, your karma made you or to be born in that situation. If you are a good person, you would have not been born there. So Vedanta does not say that you inherit, I mean, it's just by chance that you are born in a good family or with a good atmosphere or surroundings, and some people are unlucky there. It is because of our own karma. So it places the whole responsibility on our own shoulders. So that is why Vedanta says heredity cannot explain the inequalities that you see among human beings at birth. At birth, how they develop, that is a different issue altogether. Because if they get good nurture, though nature is everything, there's a beautiful book which is written by one who has no background of religion or Vedanta. He might have had some religious background. He belongs to Christian faith. So, I forgot his name, Bruce Lipton. So, Bruce Lipton wrote a beautiful book which is known as Biology of Belief. Of course, he was criticized by the scientific community because he brings belief, but he says belief can change biology. That's why he says nurture can help, but to a limited extent. Without reading Vedanta, he came to an independent conclusion by going deep into genetics, and he made a fundamental discovery that though you may inherit many things, say 50% of what your parents have given to you, but 50% is still accessible to you, and you can train yourself provided you use your will rightly. If you think and educate yourself, you can change your destiny. So that's why he says the name of the book, it's a very interesting book, Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. So he says belief can change biology. That's how you can explain so many miraculous. There's nothing miraculous about it. Cures and even how the mind impacts the body and body impacts the mind, both ways. So, we cannot explain everything through heredity. Hereditary transmission, one point is very clear now, that hereditary transmission of mental characteristics is not possible. Vedanta completely rules it out. So, if you say that it is because of my parents I am bad, it at least Vedanta will not allow you to blame your parents for or teachers or your society or surroundings for anything. Because body and mind, they are, according to Vedanta, they are totally distinct. That's why they say psychophysical complex. Our body, our personality is psychophysical. It is physical, no doubt, physical birth given by the genes of our parents. That is there, the one aspect of our personality. But there is a psycho aspect, that is a mental aspect. Since they are distinct, they are completely distinct, though one can influence the other. One is a subtle aspect of our personality, other is gross. So mind affects the body. That is why we have the psychosomatic diseases. So our mental states can influence the body, body can influence mind. But at the same time, the child cannot inherit the mental characteristics of the parents unless it is assumed, or of course, this is ridiculous, that their the minds of the parents are so, you may say, so powerful, like some of the yogis and some of the great people like Jesus Christ and all, they could completely transform human beings by their thought. So unless one has that capacity, you cannot change people. That is why Swami Vivekananda said about Sri Ramakrishna. He said, we all think that miracles are a big thing, materializing something or bringing somebody, curing some disease. They said they are the most simplest of things that one can, we cannot term them as miracles. He said the real miracle would be, if at all there is a miracle, would be to change the mind of a person. It's easy to transform the physical characteristics using powerful mental waves, but to change the mind itself, to destroy the old samskaras. So all those things, they are not so easy. And Sri Ramakrishna had that capacity not only to understand the minds of the people who came to uh, undergo some kind of spiritual training, and he would give them proper advice because he could not only read their minds, he had the ability or powers to transform those minds. Transforming body or transforming things is quite easy, but the how to transform the subtle, because that we don't inherit from our parents, we bring it along with us. So, if you want to influence that, you need a tremendous spiritual power to do that. So, that is why we find that the child inherits from the parents only the physical characteristics and some of the traits, some of the mental traits which depend on the constitution, physical constitution, the child may inherit. So you can't say that he inherits the same mind as the parents, because this is fundamentally against the idea of Vedanta that the subtle body or the Karana Sharira, these two aspects of our personality, they survive death. So what survives death? The spirit survives death. So what do you mean by spirit? By spirit, we mean the conscious principle that is behind each one of us, plus our mental inherent tendencies which are in the Karana Sharira. So that is why there is a beautiful book, if you get a chance, How is a Man Reborn? According to Vedanta, or according to all the different theories of Hinduism, Swami Satprakashananda has written a very interesting book, because in the West he was repeatedly asked, if a man is reborn, how is he reborn? Or a person is reborn, why is he reborn in a particular family? How do you explain rebirth? How do you explain the different characteristics that he inherits or he brings with himself or herself at birth? They may be totally different from your twin, who might be born at the same time, sharing the same physical characteristic. But why is he mentally different? So, all those things we will not discuss now. We will come to the next aspect of the mind. I'm, of course, now we are discussing about the not only the lower mind but also the higher mind, which is known as Buddhi. So, another important idea that Vedanta gives us, yoga, Vedanta and yoga psychology, that before man becomes rational and volitional, if you see a child, how it grows, he says the emotional nature of man becomes manifest earlier. This is what Vedanta discovered. He's an emotional being first. It's just wants to be emotionally supported by the mother. You see a small newly born baby. It's not rational. It doesn't have a will of its own. It's just surrendering, but there is some emotional attachment to the mother. It just wants to be near the mother. So that emotional nature is the first to manifest. This is how human possibilities are, you may say, uncovered by a growing up child. Reason develops later when the child goes to school, or maybe it is taught different things, what to do, what not to do, what is good, what is bad. So this reasoning faculty is a later development. But by nature, man is born with emotions. That is why in Vedanta, they say why reason is better than emotion. Because animals are emotional. If you see the dogs and how cats and all, they respond to emotions. We don't want to be cats and dogs. We don't want. We want to become rational human beings. That makes us far superior than animals. They are instinctive, they are emotional. Because just like the child, they cannot grow out of their emotional nature. They remain instinctive, emotional all their life. That's why you find even the dog whom Swami Vivekananda liked, he after the passing away of Swami, he practically stopped eating. No human being can do it. It was so emotionally attached to Vivekananda that they found that he is not eating. This is a real incident. And this dog, who was known as Bagha, that was the name, Swami Vivekananda loved it so much that it refused to eat. Then all the brother disciples, monks, were wondering, what can we do to make him eat? He was just lying at the door of his master, Swami Vivekananda. He was missing Swamiji. So after many days, they thought maybe if we just take this dog and physically take him and ask some devotee who stayed across the Ganga in Calcutta, he said, you please take this dog there. Maybe it will forget and then start eating and become normal. So they had to cross the river by boat. And the small dog, which was so faithful to Swamiji and had stopped eating, drinking, and it was very sick. So the devotee agreed, and it was taken to the other side of the Ganga. But strangely, after a few days, maybe it escaped, jumped into another boat, and came back because boats used to go ply uh, both ways. So somehow the dog wanted to come back. Then again was seen uh, lying at the door of the master, and it passed away. So now that dog has been buried exactly next to Swami Vivekananda's uh, temple where his cremation was performed. Next to that, there is a bilwa tree. Even today, there is name of this dog. So emotionally, they are far superior. I mean, their emotional attachment can be so much that they can give up their lives. But human beings are supposed to suppress this emotional nature, and slowly Vedanta says through self discipline, all the sadhana, all the japa that we do, all the prayers that we do, everything is designed, all the books that we read, they make us rational. They ask us not to just be a servant to our emotions, just rise above emotion. For that, you need some self discipline. So, that self discipline comes through that helps us to develop our rational capacity. But that is not enough. We have one more capacity to think, capacity to feel, which is emotion, which develops first. Then we have the capacity to think. Then we have a capacity to will, karma yoga. That is how to convert this reason. Just good reasoning will not help us. We know idea is good, but then we have to use our willpower and impose this self discipline. So the mind has to be purified through self discipline using our reason, our logical capacity by reading books. That is why all this wonderful positive literature on spirituality, it inspires us to be rational, not just become an emotional animal, and try to increase our rational capacity so much that it inspires us to exert our willpower and convert that rationality into concrete action. So, as a child grows, if you see, in according to Vedanta, his emotions find expression naturally. He is very emotional towards the mother, towards the pets, towards the toys. And then, long before he can develop his reason and then subsequently his will. That is why most of the children, we think it was the system of education that was, you may say, developed over centuries and in India was to after the age of 6 or 8, the child was supposed to go to the Gurukula, leave the home, because that he has to at some stage uh, get rid of the emotional attachment and not become totally dependent on the parents. So it's a very sound psychological uh, method of education that they developed. Even the kings and you see there was so much of democracy. If you see the school that Sri Krishna attended, Sandipani, his poorest friend who did not have even money to buy some gift for him, he was his classmate. So kings and normal people, commoners, everybody went to the Gurukul where no distinction was made. So totally, it's a place where emotion had no. I mean, emotion was there. It can be converted into bhakti or devotion, but care was taken that the rational capacity to think and to do hard work, develop the will with so much of self discipline, which cannot be imposed in the homes. So there was so much thought was given to this idea of Gurukula. Swami Vivekananda says that 1836, when our education, ancient education system of India, was completely converted into an education system by Macaulay's system in 1836, the very year when Sri Ramakrishna was born. So the whole education system, or was converted, the education system which would take care of the emotions, take care of the reasoning capacity, and also develop the willpower, and also buddhi, the choice making capacity, wisdom, all those things have to be cultivated in a stage or in a situation which is not, which is away from home. So some kind of detachment, going to the teacher's place, which was known as gurukula, where his emotional attachment, too much of emotional attachment, too much of dependence on the parents, and which resulted in the child being underdeveloped or becoming namby-pamby because of too much of protective care of the parents. So that to develop reason and to develop willpower, the whole system of education was designed. So if he, what will happen if emotions, which is naturally born with this capacity to feel, but not think rationally, that develops later. So what will happen? He will be swayed by joy, by sorrow, love, hate, desire, hope, anger, fear, and all those things. He doesn't know how to control it. A child, if you see a small child, you will find how it is, it just gives expression to its emotions. If somebody takes something, he will shout, he will cry. But when you are rational, you don't do these things. You understand. You try to control your emotions. So you just don't succumb to uh, alternate joys and sorrows. You just have some kind of steadiness. Oh, now I am full of joy, full of happiness. But situations may change. I may be sorrowful. But that should not disturb my mind. So rationally, his reason and will develops. And then he is not swayed by love, by hate. When you see somebody behaving emotionally and succumbing to these forces, we call that adult a childish person because he is still under the sway of emotions, which he is supposed to get rid of. When reason dawns and then he is taught that, develop some kind of maturity. This is how the world will be. There will be joy, alternate joy, sorrow, love, hate. So don't get shocked. One of the great teachings which Swami Vivekananda's father, when he was very young, he asked his father, actually his mother asked him, go and ask your father, what have you left for me? That small child naturally just goes to his father and asks. What she meant was, what can I inherit after I grow up? I mean, have you left something behind? Then he shows him, go to the mirror. What he wanted to show him was, he goes and see what I have left, what you will inherit from me. You have inherited a strong personality. And then it gave him a wonderful advice. He said, don't show surprise at anything. Anything might happen in your life. Ups and downs will come. But don't get perturbed by those things. That was a piece of advice he was given by his father, who taught him, like all the ancient Gurukulas teach, that you have to somehow get rid of these opposites, which are a result of succumbing to your emotions, love, hate, desire, hope, anger. You are denied certain things. You lose your patience, and a child will shout and cry and then have its way. But you don't do it when you grow up. You know there are certain limitations. You can't just give succumb to your emotions. So you use your reasoning and try to reason and convince yourself that everything, and at all in all situations you will not get what you want. You have to learn. So that is part of education. So when he is more impulsive because of unbridled emotions, he will be more impulsive than steady. Steadiness is a sign of rationality and strong willpower. So it needs a strong willpower to be steady, not to be disturbed by any emotions. So instinctively, when a child grows up, he seeks pleasures. He is naturally drawn to that which gives him pleasure. That is why when young Nachiketa was just 14 years, when he went to the god of death, Yama, he asked him about spiritual truths and many things, many questions he asked, what happens after death and all those things. So Yama gives him an wonderful advice. He says, in your life, whenever you start inquiring about spiritual truths, two things will approach you always, at every minute, every stage of your life, at every stage of your life. The Shreya and Preya will come to you. What do you mean by Shreya? That which is really good for you. Preya means that which is pleasant. So naturally, people, small children, when they grow up, they prefer the pleasant. They don't want unpleasant things. They are a bundle of strong likes and dislikes. And then parents normally encourage these tendencies. Oh, he doesn't like, don't give him. But Yama says exactly the opposite to Nachiketa. He says when there is a confusion, when two things approach you, whatever it may be, food, it may be some actions or some hobbies, anything. He says Shreya and Preya always come together and they tempt you. Now, true wisdom, true development of Buddhi will enable you to pick up what is Shreya, what is good. It may be bitter, it may not be pleasant. But if you choose what is the pleasant always, follow the path of least resistance and choose always the pleasant things, then you will not grow. That is a very wonderful advice that he gives. When we are emotional, we will be drawn by what is attractive. And I just create tantrums. You tell the father, I don't like this. I just throw away that food. And if the child succumbs to that and the parents succumb to that desire, emotional desire of the child, then they are actually spoiling the child. It has to be told that at some stage of your life, you have to give up these likes and dislikes. So, what food is palatable? If you eat to your heart's content, you don't get the training that you need. Sometimes you have to eat things which are not apparently pleasant, apparently palatable, but they are good for your health. So that requires a lot of reasoning, development of reason, development of willpower to do exactly what is not very pleasant because it is good for you. So Yama gives such a wonderful advice to Nachiketa. He says, be careful. Shreya and Preya will always come to you. The tendency is to go after the pleasant, but if you go after Shreya, that is the good, ultimately, though it may not be always pleasant, if you go after that, your journey towards a life of the spirit, your journey towards immortality will be smoother. So that is why you see when he was offered, first Yama tried to tempt this boy. He said, you are asking some unpleasant questions about death, what happens after death, whether there is immortality, what happens to a soul when it dies. These are very difficult questions, and you are a young boy. You are youthful, just 14, 13 years. So take all the treasures, the wealth. I can give you a lot of boons. It's just a story, but it shows. But then he chose Shreya, not Preya. He said, I know the value of these things. They will last for a few days. I have come here to ask you some fundamental questions which I want you to answer before I die. I want to know things which people normally do not ask because they are not pleasant. The pleasant things, you keep it for yourself. So Yama is very happy that he got such a wonderful student uh, who chose Shreya rather than Preya. He knew what pleasant things can do. Ultimately, in the long run, they will bring misery. So he had the insight to see through the whole idea of the pleasant or Preya and choose Shreya. So this particular tendency which we see in young children especially, but it can be carried even when a child grows. If his growth is stunted, you will find still the child in the grip of emotions and refusing to see reason into his behavior, his action. So he cannot discriminate between the pleasant and the good, between Shreya and Preya, between what is permanent and what is temporary. He just is happy with some toys And unconsciously or consciously, the parents also, just to avoid trouble, okay, he wants the pleasant, give him, so that we are at peace. But then they don't realize that they are actually spoiling the child, because they are denying him the pleasant, or they're denying him the good, and giving him what he wants. So the power of discrimination develops as the human personality grows. For that, he should be trained in reason, not just dry logic, but reason based on wisdom. And that faculty opens up at the age of 6 and 8. That is why again and again I repeat this. This tradition of giving Gayatri Mantra is not just a ritual. It has become a ritual now, but the idea was that before he goes to the Gurukul, or before he goes and develops his reasoning power and willpower, which he will anyway do when he goes to stay in a hostel or Gurukul, as it was known those days, he should be prepared with some basic fundamental choice making capacity or wisdom. So, moral goodness cannot come just because one can reason. One can convince another to show that sometimes to do evil things is more beneficial. And some people get swayed by that. So, reason by itself is not enough. We need wisdom. So, clear understanding is development of another faculty of the mind, which is known as Vijnanamaya Kosha. So that was facilitated at the age of 6, when the Gayatri Mantra, which actually is a prayer, which says, "O Lord, O Sun," Sun is supposed to be the one who gives us knowledge, "Dhiyo yona prachodayate," illumine my intellect. Please show the light clearly. Light means clarity. Please bring some clarity in my life, so that I don't suffer because of the wrong choices that I might make as a result of rational education that I'm undergoing in my Gurukul. Even before he goes, his father initiates him. Father was supposed to initiate him into this prayer, which he was supposed to repeat all his life. Whether he studied physics, chemistry, or any science, he was supposed to repeat this. So that is why though there is no consensus. You see, we don't have a book of do what is good, what is bad. Though there are some general virtues which we are asked to cultivate, but at the same time, Vedanta does not insist on just a moral book. Oh, you have to do it. Why do I have to do it? Oh, there is no rule. You have to do it because it is a code. It is a moral code which is there in our scriptures. Now, no young boy is going to buy into this. No modern student will follow something because it is in this book or that book. He says, I don't believe in the authority of this book. However holy it may be, I am an atheist. I don't want. Show me some rational uh, reason why I should not do bad and why I should do good. Seeing that it is easier, a path of least resistance, if we follow the evil path, sometimes success can be faster or better. So it is so difficult to explain ethics, what to do, what not to do, unless the buddhi is trained. So that is why this prayer. And this prayer enables to refine our emotions, because prayer is always associated with some kind of emotion. We are born with certain emotion, but we have to refine it. And when we refine this emotion, what happens is it enables us to use our reason properly, because reason is just a tool. It can be used for destructive purposes or for creative purposes. So, reason by itself will not solve your problem. Reason based on clear understanding, which is known as buddhi. That is why we make a subtle difference between manas and buddhi. It's the same mind. One is a subtle mind, one is a gross mind, which trains you. It helps you to develop certain mental skills with which you can be successful in your profession, your job, your business. Those things it can do, but it can't train you. No matter how much AI we use, it can't. It possibly cannot make you think ethically. Of course, there are now so many models where only ethical things are fed and they expect the AI to give you only ethical answers. But still, uh, most of the people who belong to the spiritual tradition, especially the Pope, the present Pope said, I doubt if ethics with AI can help us take the right decisions. There are certain things which human mind can do. Only human mind can do. A well-developed buddhi can do. A well-developed intellect or intellect is actually translated as buddhi. So this buddhi doesn't come so easily. It has to come through spiritual training. You can't train a machine to behave ethically. You can train maybe to some extent. If you feed only ethical ideas, maybe it will give you ethical answers. That is what the argument is now. Most of the famous AI development institutions, they now have people, they employ people who train these uh, devices or these different AI programs to induce them to think in an ethical way. So they have people, theologians, they have religious people, they have ethical people who try to feed these devices so that they can at least copy or imitate human decision making, that human wisdom. But human wisdom cannot be, I don't think it is so easy, because even for a well trained human being, a living human being, I'm not talking of AI models or robots, I'm talking of live human beings. They sometimes behave like robots. They are under the control of their impulses, unconscious desires, unconscious thoughts, and they are not always trained. Unfortunately, we are not trained to become conscious beings using our reason, our will, and our wisdom properly. So we will continue in the next class. Are there any questions? Yeah, any questions here? Conscious beings using we have a few minutes. We can and our wisdom proper. So prayer. Yeah. Next class. Are there any questions? Modern education system, teach young people to say, follow your follow your conscience, or yeah, what you enjoy doing. But there are two schools of thought, two um, potentially conflicting thoughts there. One is, let's a young person follow their conscience, follow their whims and fancies. Yeah, and maybe they are good at something, so they just go on and allow them freedom to follow. Yeah. The other uh, school of thought might be exercise prayer and try something that they don't like, and almost oppose their natural instinct. And is there what should be the obviously the second system is better, but that means you'll have to have more discipline. And now that is a word which is hated by the children as well as modern education institutions. Unfortunately, they think any kind of discipline restricts freedom. So it is a very difficult debate. There are different ways of looking at it, because even sometimes uh, irrational discipline also can cause problems. They will just be suppressing their ideas. So it's not that the merits and demerits of both systems are there. So one system which says just let them be free to choose. That's one way. That's how now slowly society is uh, encouraging, at least the educational institutions, schools. Even parents are not supposed to uh, try and influence, but I don't think some kind of restrictions, because then we should not blame them. They'll do whatever they like, and then finally we will regret. But at the same time, it has not been shown that too much of discipline also helps. Too much of discipline, to a certain extent, when they are under somebody, it will help. When the props are removed and they go out into the open world, they do exactly the opposite. We have seen it in most of of the highly disciplined institutions where discipline is enforced, what happens is once the pressure of that discipline is removed, they just take the opposite. I mean, you see, ultimately it boils down to what Vedanta says. We are born with our own inherent tendencies. No matter which school you go, which how your parents train you, how your teachers train you, it's not going to make much of a difference. It will, I'm not pessimistic. It will definitely make some difference, but ultimately, you come, that's what Vedanta is telling us again and again, that you come with a repository of all inherent tendencies or samskaras as they are, which are stored in your deepest recesses of your mind, which is known as Karana Sharira. And with that, you get the education or the training to develop your personality, isn't it? That is how each child is. So each child has already got something which he brings from his past background. So you can't say any system is foolproof. In some cases, it may work, in some cases, it may not work. So we'll have to be very careful about this. Each one, that is why the Guru Shishya relationship should be individual. Each disciple needs to be understood and taught in a different way, which is not possible because now we have classrooms. The idea of Gurukul was living with the Guru, always living with the Guru, so that the teacher gets a chance to understand what is a particular teaching that is suitable for this boy, may not be suitable for the other. So it has to be given in different ways, which we cannot afford to do now because everything is becoming in a massive scale. If there are 40 students, even 20 students, you can't give individual training. It's some kind of general training which the teachers try to give. Mostly it is information. It's not character building. The parents are also not interested that the teachers should be very particular about their discipline and other things. They want them to get good grades and get as much information as possible. But unfortunately, nobody bothers whether he will be wise or not. The wisdom comes as a result of his past karma. So it is very difficult. I mean, it's a very complex thing. Even in those days, it was complex. The same guru taught Duryodhana and Pandavas. So they turned out to be different people. Both were talented. But you see, one misused the talent, the others were wiser. So you can't say. There's no system is perfect. That's what I feel. So ultimately Vedanta places the whole responsibility on your own shoulder. So Swami Vivekananda gave a famous lecture in California when he went again in the during his second visit. He gave a wonderful talk which has been found by Swami Ashokananda and he published it. It was not there in the earlier edition, but it is part of the ninth volume. The talk is Man the Maker of His Own Destiny. So where people asked him in California that how does one shape one's destiny? He says, you are responsible. Don't blame God or don't blame anyone in this. Because that in that way, that is true also, though we may ascribe it to God's grace and certain situations, parents' help and teachers, good education. These are secondary. Man has the capacity, God has given him a will which he has to develop, an intelligence which he has to develop. He has been given freedom to develop himself. That is why Vedanta says if you place the whole responsibility on the shoulder of the student, he will be a better student. The more responsibility you give, the better it is. Okay? Yeah. Are there any questions online? Then we will conclude. Yes, yes. Yeah. About? We are aware of only 1% of our consciousness. Yes, yes. Not consciousness. Yes, you may say unconscious. Unconscious mind. You see, the whole iceberg is compared to our entire mind. and 1/10 is the conscious mind, the thoughts that we think and what we think of ourselves, our mind or mental state, that is 1%. But 9/10 is in the unconscious, which Sigmund Freud also said. It is stored in our unconscious mind, which is not apparent now to us. It's not apparent. But when those thoughts come, we are surprised because they come to the surface. They come to the surface of the mind, which is like tip of the iceberg. So many things about ourselves. Forget about others. Ourselves we do not know. That's what I meant. It's not just the conscious mind. Conscious mind is 1/10. Unconscious is, it's just a rough estimate. Not that 9/10 means exactly 9/10. It's just one way of expressing that there are many things which are there in the unconscious mind, which we need to consciously bring it and deal with it through spiritual practices, through many methods. We can deal with it. It's not that we are helpless. We have to deal with it. But they are there. That's the idea. Pardon? Guidance. Yeah, guidance, that's what spirituality is all about. It's about all about training the mind. Your the whole faculty. Mind is not, you see, it's a complex thing. Mind is made of conscious mind, unconscious mind, subconscious mind, the willpower, the rational reasoning, emotions. There are so many aspects of the mind. So we have to deal with that mind as a whole. We can't just deal with emotions a little bit. It's a complex mind that we inherit. So the method is definitely there. Whereas yoga is nothing but a method to train your mind. When you say yoga, I'm not talking of the physical yoga, though they begin with asanas and all, and people get stuck at physical yoga. They want a healthy body, they don't want a healthy mind. But if you really go into the depths of yoga psychology, they say you have to today or tomorrow or someday you have to take control of your mind, of your unconscious. The iceberg which is below, you have to lift it, find out what is there, and then bring it to the conscious plane, and then deal with it. So that is the method. Yoga is the method. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which unfortunately we are not discussing now. We used to discuss it, but there are good books on that. Swami Vivekananda's Raj Yoga, which is a commentary on the Patanjali's Yoga. It's a very scientific system which teaches you how to deal with your own mind. So there is a scientific, definitely there is a system. It's not something which is mysterious or mystical. It is a very, very simple, practical, rational approach to how to deal with your thoughts. When you deal with your thoughts, you are dealing with your mind, conscious and unconscious. First, it will discuss how to first tame the conscious mind, which we can see the tip of the iceberg. But then it also teaches us how to deal with the unconscious mind, which we are not aware of, which will give us trouble later. So yoga deals with both. First, it deals with the conscious mind. First, make your mind steady. First, go to solitude. That's why it insists on solitude. First, don't create more noise. Don't feed more things to your mind than it can handle. Already there is 9/10 which we cannot handle. And then the conscious mind then keeps pushing more and more restless stuff into that unconscious mind. And then you find it so difficult. So first it says, yoga says, if you go step by step, it says first deal with your conscious mind. Just go to a place where there is some solitude. Just make the restless mind a bit more steady and restful. Then when the mind is steady, then you can dare to deal with the unconscious mind. So you should have some space for yourself. That is why all this meditation, what is the need for all that? Because we have to deal with our minds. First, the conscious mind by creating a proper atmosphere, but that will not be enough. Just having a good atmosphere and a conducive atmosphere for peaceful meditation will not help. There are many things which we have to deal with when we sit for meditation. There will be agitation, there will be a lot of unconscious memories and thoughts coming, and while we are meditating, then we think, oh, when we were not meditating, we were so peaceful. Now we have started meditating, we are just disturbing our unconscious mind. So, but it has to be dealt with sooner or later. The sooner you do, the better. Okay? Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat.